but the guy's a winner. And, being third in the Tour is not what Remco Evenepoel is riding his bike for. He is riding his bike to win. And in that point of view, I think that the Giro would be perfect for him.
Everybody, welcome back to The Move Plus, our new off-season weekly show. I'm going to go through a few topics of the week with Johan Bruyneel. I'm Spencer Martin, and then we will get into a few listener questions. If you want your question answered on next week's show, just email it to info@wedo.team, and we will try to get to it. But Johan, the big thing, top of our itinerary here, Ineos, Steve Cummings finally leaves. It feels like this has been happening for half a year at this point. He was at home. They actually, the weirdest thing about this is they are on the record saying like, no, this is totally normal. Like he's not leaving the team. And then now it's official. He's leaving the team. It looks like Tom Pidcock staying. I don't know if you saw it. It was like hostage video-esque look when he was at the Manchester United Chelsea game. And they were all in suits, which is kind of an odd. I don't know if I was a professional cyclist, I'd be suiting up to go to a football match. But it looks like Pidcock staying, Steve Cummings gone. What's the story behind the scenes here?
Well, I don't know the details, but obviously, Cummings leaving, it's, the next logical. We saw it coming, right? He has not been seen at the races or close to the team since, I would say, the Dauphiné, or even before. I think the Dauphiné was his last race. You're right. There was, some weird communication, but for me, it was clear that he was gone, even if he still had a contract, I think. But I think it's the next. We also saw the head trainer leave, Javier Arteche, and all these other key people, starting with Ellingworth, going over Dan Bigham, head mechanic, really a lot of key staff. So, what can we say about it? I wrote a tweet about it when I saw that it was official that Cummings was leaving. And I said this, with Steve Cummings now officially announcing his departure from Team Ineos after almost every other key staff member has left, I want to repeat what I have said a few weeks ago on the Move podcast. Team Ineos Grenadiers is a ship without one really strong captain. Instead, it gives me the impression of a hen house with too many chickens running around in different directions. I have spoken to some people close to the team, and they have confirmed me word for word that this is what's happening. So my impression is not wrong. Now, what can we conclude? Pidcock, surprisingly, was present at the first team gathering. What do we know is that he has a huge salary and that it's probably not so easy, even if Ineos would like to see Pidcock move on to another team and get rid of the reportedly, 4 or 5 million euro-pound contract. It's not happening because there's not enough teams or any team that is willing or able to make that effort. And Ineos probably would like to pay a little bit to see him leave, but it's not happening. So if I'm Pidcock and I see, okay, I have another 3 years here on my contractually obligation from Ineos towards me. This is, so it's 25, 26, 27, it's 15 million. If what are they going to do with this? At least next year, it looks like he's going to be on Ineos. What's happening exactly, I can still not figure it out because they're bringing in new people, some people I haven't heard of. And also, they have now recently just announced that there's going to be an Ineos development team, which to me is a bit strange. It's like panic maneuvers that they're doing to get things right. The thing about the development team is what I saw is that it's not their own development team. It's an association with an existing German team. Now, if you do that, it's going to take some years to make that your own. So you could say, well, do they really want to go on with the team? having a development team would indicate yes, but it's definitely not the right way to go. I don't know. I cannot figure out what's happening there. I think that behind the scenes something else might be cooking, that maybe during the current of the next season we're going to talk about.
You'd be like, if your friend's house, like the foundation was sinking, and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about like doing some landscaping. It's like, well, okay, I guess that's a decent idea, but it seems like there's other things you need to address. The development team, you're the first person I thought of, because I thought, oh, maybe they do want to stick around in the sport. But even that is kind of weird, this hybrid approach. And then would you say that, I don't even know if the lack of development of riders is their problem? Like, they get a lot of good young riders, and then it seems like the problems start once they're there in the senior team, they're not developing. So yeah, it's strange. I mean, I think we can read into this that Tom Pidcock is making a lot of money, like a lot of money. And no one was willing to pay 4.5 million euros to take them off Ineos's hands. And that wouldn't even be the full value of the contract. Ineos would still have to pay probably over €1 million for him not to ride on the team. Who are they going to sign for that difference that would be better than Tom Pidcock? It doesn't actually make a lot of sense. So I guess he's there.
Especially at this point in the year, there is nobody. There is no alternative.
Yeah. Who's the bogey out there?
I'm still a bit, I don't know, this whole thing about, him pulling off the team for Lombardy. That just does not make sense. I mean, it was clear that he was not going to win Lombardy anyway.
Well, he might have podiumed, though. I actually think he could have podiumed. And then Brian Smith on Twitter said that they didn't want to pay the bonus if he had a good result.
Well, then they made a really bad business decision already, and which they're going to have to deal with next year. Because if I'm Pidcock, and Pidcock is known as a guy with a super strong personality, and the guy's a fighter, I'm riding for every single podium I can. So they
yeah.
I can't win. If I can't win, okay, I'm going for second or third, man.
I mean, I would say on the team bus for every race, I'd say to the team, if you get me on the podium, you guys get my bonus. I don't even want the bonus. I just want to screw over this team.
You can say, okay, half of my bonuses are for you guys.
I mean, if it seems ridiculous, but it's also possible. Like, if you just watch like the greater Ineos empire, some severe cost cutting measures in the last few months. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe they didn't have the money in the bank account to transfer it over.
They do, but it's strange. I'm sure that during next year we're gonna come out with some kind of bombshell story about Ineos.
Yes, I don't even know if next year, but it could be even before the start of the Tour Down Under. On the topic of money, on the topic of contracts, today Pogačar, I asked you maybe 2 weeks ago, like what would I make if I was the best cyclist in the world? I think you estimated between 8 and 10 million euros. It comes out, it's 50 million euros over 6 years. So that's like 8.3 million euros a year. That's pretty good. Actually, that's underpaid. He's underpaid because he scores more points than many World Tour teams or a fraction of the total payroll. The big thing to me, though, that to buy him out of his contract, 200 million euros.
Wow, that's ridiculous. That's just put in something so you can say, okay, hey, he's not going anywhere, right? In case whatever, if the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi has to all of a sudden fight with one of the Saudis, with the Saudi investment fund, where they're richer than him. So whatever. The buyout is ridiculous, but it doesn't really matter. I think Pogačar is good where he is. He's happy where he is. And the sponsors, UAE, and all the other sponsors are extremely happy with Pogačar. So it's a win-win for everybody.
You bring us right into our next one, Remco Evenepoel. And he said, did he say that he wanted to do the Giro Tour double?
No, he said, I think there's a hint that first of all, he said that he wants to get back to the feeling of being a Grand Tour winner. And then in the Belgian media, I don't know if he said it or he kind of alluded to it, or if the Belgian media put one and one together. But there are certain reports that he might be considering doing the Giro and the Tour. Makes sense.
It's smart, yeah.
Makes sense. He already won the Vuelta, right? So the Giro, Remco could win the Giro if it's a course that is okay for him. He also said that he will never sacrifice Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Giro, it's doable, perfectly doable.
We saw it done this year.
Yeah, of course. We cannot take that as the blueprint, for our program. But yeah, I mean, I think if when Remco saw the course of the Tour, also the absence of a super long time trial is probably not in his favor. He's going to go back to the Tour, trying to be on the podium again. I think that's logical, and I think that would be a logical evolution for him to be on the podium a number of times. But the guy's a winner, and being third in the Tour is not what Remco Evenepoel is riding his bike for. He is riding his bike to win, and in that point of view, I think that the Giro would be perfect for him. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a great idea. Assuming Pogacar doesn't do the Giro, like if you can win a Grand Tour, that's nothing to sneeze at. The team that team is not above that. Evenepoel's not above that. I mean, what did Roglic say?
We also have Primož Roglic, who actually said, "Hey, ask me about my program. I'm going to look at all the races that Pogacar's not doing and try to win those." Which, I think we could see Primož doing Giro and Vuelta.
Yeah, he's a smart man. That's how you know he's smart, because right now it seems tough, but Pogacar showed that it's not disqualifying, and I'm looking at it right now. There's 5 weeks in between the Giro and the Tour. So the Giro finishes June 1st. The Tour doesn't start until July 4th or 5th, I believe. So that's a decent amount of time. I mean, the biggest thing I would worry about, and I think Pogacar has kind of showed us that if you're good enough, the Giro can just be a training camp. The thing I would worry about is crashes and weather, but they got some pretty bad weather at the Giro this year. It didn't really seem to affect them that much. And if you can stay out of crashes, like Remco Evenepoel is so good, he's not going to be on the limit every day at the Giro d'Italia.
Well, if you're Remco Evenepoel and the Giro, it's not the same as Pogacar riding Giro basically at 80%. He was probably 100%, but he didn't need to go 100% to win it. So that's to be seen. But speaking of Remco, I'm guessing you guys have seen it also over there, but it started in the Belgian media saying that there was a journalist who came out with a column saying that he had details about the apparently almost done deal between Remco and RedBull-Bora, and he spoke about 10 million. When I saw that, I said, this is complete bullshit. I did some research also, and I now know it's bullshit. First of all, the guy who came with this rumor is a guy. It's an old guy. He's been one of the main TV commentators in the past. He's been put on the side and tries to make noise to stay relevant. It's Michel Wuits, who in Belgium we call him in the cycling world, we call him the self-declared Pope of cycling. And he's not that anymore. He's never been, but he came out with that column and spoke about 10 million. Listen, there is no way Remco Evenepoel would walk away from a 10 million euro contract in the first place. Secondly, I don't know anybody in their right mind who would pay 10 million to a rider. He's one of the top 3, top 4 riders, but he's not the number 1. And if Pogacar makes 8.5 or 8, whatever, and he's the first, the best rider by far, there's no way. Remco right now apparently is somewhere between 4 and 5 million. I think he was 4 million. I don't know if that's with or without bonuses, but Patrick Lefevre and his team did quite a bit of efforts, and they gave him a raise, and they accommodated quite a bit of Remco's demands. There's new cyclists, there's especially new staff members, and so that 10 million. I have heard that there were serious talks, but there's never been 10 million. That's just complete bullshit. So
I think
Michel Wurtz, you are a fossil that tries to come alive again.
We're going to get aggregated on Belgian media for sure. I think what happened here.
Answer. I do not care.
I'm George Hincapie, by the way.
Okay.
But I think what happens is sometimes journalists, media people, they forget there's two sides to an equation. So someone probably told him 10 million. And so he said 10 million euro contract. He's forgetting the duration part of that. So 10 million over a number of years. It looked like it was 2 years. So let's just say 2 years. So 10 divided by 2, that's 5. And then you're like, wow, 5 million euros a year, that's a lot. But the reporting said it was pretty bonus heavy. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, 3 million guaranteed, 2 million in bonuses. Maybe that bonus even includes to win the tour, which isn't likely, but is worth it. If he wins the tour, of course, you'd pay him 5 million euros a year. My big question, and apparently, I don't know if you know this, there's like new stricter UCI rules on this. So if you want to approach a rider that's under contract, you have to inform their team beforehand. So
hello, Spencer.
But let's just Ralph Denk is a good guy. Let's just say Ralph Denk does that.
There is not Ralph Denk. Nobody. I mean, whatever the UCI rules say, nobody can prevent another person from talking to another person. And even if this team is not talking to the rider, they're going to talk to their agent, and that's just the way it is. So UCI rules don't matter. They never mattered. The UCI is trying to regulate these kind of things, but it's a free market. I mean, if in normal life, if you have a job and somebody approaches you or interested in your services, then you listen. Then you can still do whatever you want. So no.
Well, there's actually a court case going on right now in Europe about this, that potentially it's a football case that maybe footballers will just be able to leave contracts, that actually keeping them in is against employment law. But setting that aside, he somehow goes back to Patrick Lefevre. He gets 5 million for 2025. Some weird wording on this too. He's like, I'm at Soudal Quickstep in 2025. You're like, well, what about 2026? What's going on here? But here's the thing. Why it actually doesn't make sense for him to leave, because his team's very good. Like that, they have very good support for him. He's the lone leader. What's he going to go to Red Bull in 2025 and be with Primoz? That doesn't make any sense. The big question to me is, if this is true, why 2-year contract for Remco Evenepoel? I'd be a little insulted if I was him. Like everyone else getting lifetime deals.
Red Bull.
Yeah, like what's going on with that?
That's what makes no sense. If Red Bull is going to make the effort to get Remco Evenepoel out of his contract and on board, it's not going to be in a 2-year deal. There's no way. No, not for Red Bull and not for Remco. That's just so. This in my opinion, this information is completely false.
Yeah, that was the big red flag to me, and I still don't think this is done. I don't have any information on this, but Primoz has a contract through 2025. Remco says he's with Soudal Quickstep through 2025. What happens in 2026? This might be part of some larger. This might be more coordinated than we think, and
yeah, it could be.
So yeah,
then again. So in sports and in cycling, a lot can happen and change it in the course of a season. Whatever. It seems to me like Remco at some point was super frustrated at Quickstep because this was not okay. This was not okay. I have spoken with people in Soudal Quickstep, and they have done a lot to accommodate his wishes. They've done a lot. I would say probably 90 to 95% of what Remco wanted, he has got, plus a race.
I mean, he's almost like doubled his salary, I think. Wasn't he on like 2.5 million euros? And now he's on.
Listen, he's one of the top riders in the world. Performance-wise, he's amazing. For sponsors, I think he's super interesting. Also, he has charisma as a person. So I think he's worth his contract. But he's in a good team. Let's look at it. I mean, if you look at the end result, you have UAE and you have Visma, and who's the third team in the world? It's Sudak Quickstep. They're third team in the world.
Well, it's shocking how much. If you remember, we did a daily show at the Vuelta when Sepp Kuss won. What was that? Just 2023. We like railed on the team all the time. You know, they were good last year. Like that was a good GC team. I was very impressed. I wouldn't leave, at least for 2025. If I was him, I wrote this little formula too, and you put in every top rider's results for the season, and it spits out like an objective score. And I was surprised by the result. Evenepoel was far and away the second best rider according to my formula out of the year. You know, like well behind Pogačar. But so if you assume he's second or third in the world, 5 million euros is market rate. That's not a terrible deal. Mm-hmm. So shifting gears a little bit. Lotto Kopecky wants to go. She said she wants to go contest the GC at the Tour de France Femmes 2025. Mm-hmm. I've not discussed. I have thoughts about this. I know you have thoughts about it. We don't know each other's thoughts. How did you read this?
Interesting. I think we're also dealing with a rider here that she is looking for new goals, right? So she's now double world champion. She's won classics. She's won Tour de Flanders a number of times, I guess. So let's not forget she was second 2 years ago in the Tour de France, behind Demi Vollering. But she had an amazing year. This year she didn't do the Tour de France, if I'm not mistaken, but she did climb pretty well in, was it Tour de Romandie?
Yeah, so she beat really well.
So now being on a different team than Demi Vollering, I think it makes sense. Probably also what the team will want from her, but we're going to have to see also something we haven't talked about in no show at all is the return of Anna van der Breggen on SD Works. She's making a comeback. So
from the team car.
From the team car back to, and what I've heard is that she's been on training rides and that she is kicking everybody's ass. So we'll see. I think Lotto Kopecky, if it's the Lotto Kopecky of 2023, I would say, yeah, go for it. You never know what's going to happen with the favorite. Usually, I mean, in my opinion, Demi Vollering is the favorite. Even if Kasia Nuadoma has won this year's Tour de France, for me, Demi Vollering remains the favorite, remains the best GC rider. We'll see Anna van der Breggen, what her level is going to be. It may seem a bit more simple than in reality it will be, because women's cycling has evolved and the level is so high that she may get a shock when she gets back into competition. But I'm not excluding it. I think she can definitely podium. She can podium in the Tour.
I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think she wins. I know that's a hot take, but just looking at her results from last year, and this must have been the thinking inside the team, because they chose not to try to retain Vollering. They thought she was too expensive. They maybe looked around and said, wait a second, with Anna van der Breggen coming back and Lotto Kopecky, like, is Lotto Kopecky the next Tour de France Femmes winner? Like, do we already have, like, what's the meme? Like, we're not getting Demi Vollering. We already have Demi Vollering at home. Like, they already have the world's best rider. Maybe they thought they didn't need Demi Vollering. I mean, the Romandie result, and I know you brought up a really good point. I think this was last week that, okay, she won Romandie, but she got dropped on a lot of the climbs at World Championships and had to get back on. But stage 2 of Romandie is 10K basically at 8.5%. She loses that stage, but by a bike throw, doesn't get dropped by Demi Vollering. Like, that's about as hard as climbs get. Mm-hmm. And, if she can time trial, like, I don't think this is a done deal. And I know that Demi Vollering crashed and it polluted the whole sample.
There is no time trial in next year's Tour de France Femme.
Even better for Kopecky.
There are two hard climbs, though, really, really hard climbs. One is the Col de la Madeleine, which is extremely hard from that side. And then there's another stage which has the Col de Jouplan in there, which is super, super hard. Jouplan is basically 10 kilometers, 9 to 10%. So super hard. But
she wasn't bad on the Tourmalet, if you remember.
No, it's those two climbs. That's it. Every other climb, I mean, and there are, it depends if there's bonifications and if there's wind, and we'll see. So I like the idea. I like the challenge, and it's something that I think she will start. I mean, she starts to look for things that she hasn't done until now. So she's still probably going to do the classics and everything, but with a proper specific preparation for the Tour, I think she's definitely a good candidate for the podium.
I agree. Last bit before we get into the questions. So we talked a few weeks ago about Olav Alexander Boo. He's like famous triathlon coach going to Uno X. And we also talked about his like main client, triathlete Christian Blumenfeld, who's had a rough year. We're saying he was going to go from triathlon to cycling. He was rumored to be going to Jayco Alula, didn't go at the last second, said just the money's not good enough. I don't know. I don't really know what he makes in triathlon, but maybe I'd imagine, and I think this was what Mark Allen, the famous triathlete, said. He's like, if this guy really thinks he's going to come in and be a star, that's probably not going to happen. And he's not going to get paid star money. He's going to get paid like Cam Wurf money. So yeah. I could see why that fell apart. It's then I assume Jayco Alula had an empty roster spot. And then Alan Hatherley, is that how you say his name? The South African mountain bike rider, signs with them. I kind of like this from Matt White over there, like just looking for guys accomplished in other, like, I guess, sub-disciplines of cycling, and then signing them just to see if he could probably to get like is there a new star brewing that everyone's missing because they're not a traditional cyclist? So I like the move a lot.
Well, I think it's nice. The guy's obviously been on a super high level all season. He's won the world championships. He won the last World Cups also. He's a really good climber. I'm a bit surprised to see it happening because I think he was a Cannondale athlete. Blumenfeld made more sense because he's on Giant, and Giant is the sponsor of So this is not the case here. But hey, there's plenty of examples of good mountain bikers who became extremely, extremely good road cyclists. So there's no reason why this wouldn't be the case here. I have no doubt that he's going to have his spot in the top of the pro peloton.
He's pretty old, 28. But I mean, this goes back to, if you're Matt White at Jayco, you don't have the budget to sign, traditional big stars. So you have to look for like, what's the inefficiency here? Maybe he's 28. People think that's too old. All right, let's bring him in. Yeah. And if you're a kid and you want to be a really good road racer, you should be a mountain bike racer, because that's how you get really good and really strong. Like some of these guys come in and they're absolute monsters. When you got third at them, I forgot about this. You got third at the Olympics. Like, think of the level of those two guys in first and second. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you have anything else to cover before we get into questions?
I think that's it. We'll see. We'll see in the next weeks if we keep talking about. I mean, we're definitely going to talk about transfers. We can jump next week. We can probably talk about who hasn't found a team yet. But no, I think we've covered most of it.
Yeah, I think we'll have to talk about that because there are going to be some big names left out. I don't know if we want to do a trades and transfers specific show or. Yeah. Well, it's a little tough because some teams, like, you look at some of these rosters and they like wait until the last second to fill them up. So you don't want to be talking about someone being without a contract when they've secretly signed a contract behind the scenes. One last thing, teams can no longer wear leaders jersey colors from Grand Tours. I read that this morning and thought, what's the big deal? And then I started to think about it. There's actually not that many colors left. And this is a classic UCI decision because the current fix was, okay, Visma's yellow. At the Tour, they can't wear yellow. They wear some special jersey. Seemed like a fine thing. Did anyone have any problems with that? And so now, what you can no longer.
Also, it's the whole season now.
The whole season. So you can no longer wear like white.
That
pink,
makes no sense. That makes no sense because that's actually pure dictatorship. Because if you have a corporate sponsor who insists that their colors are in accordance with the uniform, I mean, that's the way it should be. If Jumbo was yellow, when the supermarkets were sponsoring.
Yeah. Well, even think about the brand EF has built, the team, with those pink jerseys. And then now, I mean, to me, I don't want to sound too much like a conspiracy theorist. It sounds a little bit like the UCI is trying to cut. Like EF has been able to build such a recognizable brand with basically the color of their uniforms. And they're just trying to make it harder for teams to build their own identity. So they're all like plug and play little cogs in the UCI machine. I mean, one thing I've been wondering about is how does the UCI feel about Red Bull? Like they cannot be happy about that you have this big company coming in who could really push them around.
Here we have again, Spencer, the ins and outs of what's happening in sports federations, international sports federations. And if you would take a specialist lawyer, commercial lawyer, and dedicate a few months to the UCI rulebook, you challenge this in civil court. I mean, a third of the UCI book would fall down because they're against the civil rights. So anyway, that's what they do. Usually, sports federations are known for that. They think that they are above normal legislation, and they get away with it because they are governing people that are depending on them. And even if you protest, you don't get a license and you can't exercise your job. So it's a sad situation. But this is one of these cases again. If you would bring this to the European Court of Human Rights, and the thing is, it's a lengthy process, and you lose a lot of money, you lose a lot of time, a lot of energy, and most members of the UCI think it's not worth it. But there's a bunch of laws in there that are not legal, that are illegal.
Yeah, that's a podcast. That's a whole podcast for another day. But you are correct.
It's a season series.
It's a whole nother show, sub show. So first question, Brian from Massachusetts. This shows that people are listening, Johan. So on a recent The Move Plus episode, Johan and Spencer were discussing what benefits Tadej and UAE were getting from riding deeper rims during mountain stages. Remember, you said this was not a noticeable difference. I recall during the tour, Johan compared the energy expended between Tadej and Remco and Matteo Jorgensen during the tour, and Tadej expended significantly less kilojoules during the stage being discussed. It's the way it's written threw me off. He's basically wondering, are the deeper section rims and his like aero position, an aero bike, even though the bike's not that aero, is that causing him to expend less energy?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of different factors. I think the first factor is that Tadej is more protected than these other two riders. Even if Remco is protected, Remco is not as skillful on the bike in terms of fighting for position. And, I think Remco makes a lot more efforts to go along the peloton with or without teammates, but already, at the same pace, I think Matteo for sure, because Matteo was never protected. So he's always in the wind. And Tadej is actually only hitting the front when he decides to go. I think that's the main reason. Aerodynamically, I think it's difficult to find somebody who's more aerodynamic than Remco Evenepoel, although Tadej is also aerodynamic on his road bike. But Remco is, they don't call him for nothing the aero bullet. So I think those they're more protected, but also just overall, I think the level of Tadej Pogačar is just higher than everybody else. And whenever he's in zone 2, the rest is sometimes already at the end of zone 2 or in the beginning of zone 3. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, also the positioning from Remco, like I've been going through and marking his position at major points in big races, and he's always out of position. That's got to cost you a ton of energy. And then Pogačar is always in the right position. I was also surprised the size of Pogačar's teammates at the Tour, like some tall, really tall riders. Like Niels Paul obviously is a monster, but even like Pavel Sivakov, like pretty big guy.
What's the other guy's name? The Slovenian guy. I forgot his name now.
Domen Novak. Yeah, like so you do save a lot of energy with that.
Yeah, well, Remco had a few big guys too. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, he has big guys, but then he's not always behind them. He'll just be like randomly sprinkled throughout the field.
Yeah.
So next question. Greetings from Denmark. Love the show. Following the Tour de France route presentation, I have a question regarding the dangers for GC riders and bunch sprints. The bunch sprints are extra dangerous because both sprint teams and GC teams are fighting to be in the front. We saw this, remember, with Remco, Primož Roglič crashing out at this year's Tour. What if the GC contenders talked to each other before the race and agreed that in the last, for example, 10 kilometers, they would ride 5 to 10 seconds behind the peloton, each with a couple of domestiques to shield them? This is probably not possible, but wouldn't that reduce the risk of GC contenders crashing out? All the best, Johan. Johan, you've read my mind. I think that like UAE should just ride behind the peloton. Like, why are they fighting for positioning? But you tell us why that's wrong, Johan.
Yeah, well, it makes sense if everybody agrees, but cycling is known for making agreements, and then some guys will never agree at the last moment. So nobody trusts anybody. That's just proper to this sport. There's so many different players with different interests at any single moment that that's never going to happen. It needs to be a rule, otherwise it's not going to happen.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And what we're discussing is not just related to cycling. This is everything, like politics. Like why don't all countries just get rid of their nuclear weapons? Wouldn't that make more sense? But then everyone's afraid someone won't do it, and then they'll be in trouble because, if you're all behind there. Also, something that I think is underrated, you don't always know who the GC contenders are in the first week. Obviously with Pogačar, like you kind of forget, but even think of like Jai Hindley at the Giro that he won. Like you weren't necessarily like Jai Hindley, or think of Ben O'Connor at the Vuelta this year. That's a perfect example. Like, would he have been tagged as like, hey, you have to ride back here with us, or would he just be up front? What if there's a split and you're 10 seconds behind and then suddenly you're a minute behind?
I think it's changed already. They for certain stages they changed the 3 kilometer rule to the 5 kilometer rule. So that's it's a step in the good direction. I just think it's very simple. Whenever sprint stages are on the menu, it's usually into a big city. And it should be, and especially in France, you always come from, there's a lot of terrain between cities or villages. Whenever you hit and over here we call it the agglomeration, where the city starts. And where usually then the road start to narrow and there are more and more turns. That should be where the time cut is for GC.
Yeah, I agree. Did you see this weird rule, the Roglič rule, that now let's say it's the 5K rule, you crash inside the last 5K. If you crash alone, it doesn't, you're on your own, like you're losing that time, because it's a little ridiculous this year.
You could take a crash.
Yeah, and then Roglič crashed on a downhill. There was a descent, and then I would say borderline an uphill finish, and he lost a ton of time, but then he got credited as the same time. I think
that was a surprise. That was a surprise.
Yeah, but now I guess it incentivizes you. If you're crashing, you should just start grabbing at anyone you can, so you're not the only one going down. So last question for the day. Hi from Germany. One question that has been on my mind for years. What are Johan and Lance's opinion on the movie The Program, about Lance's career, and what do both think about how they are portrayed in this one? Is it almost what happened, or are there major things that have been wildly exaggerated? Thanks, Patrick from Germany. I will say I've seen the movie. Johan, I don't think you have. It's not a good movie, so I'll just start with that.
Yeah,
mistakes were made in the
I can't speak for Lance, but I'm pretty sure he has the same opinion. And that's actually a really good question. I'm happy comes up. Well, first of all, the program is a movie. It's not a documentary. It's a movie where they've used actors to play certain characters, and it's been based on the book Seven Deadly Sins, written by David Walsh. That's the how do you say this? The script, right? The movie is definitely not a reflection of what happened. I've seen some little clips. I'll give one example, right? Which this is funny actually. There is a scene of this guy who plays me, the French actor Denis Ménochet, who's also famous for his role in Inglourious Basterds. And so there is a scene in there where he, anyway, I'll start over. In cycling, usually when the start is given, riders can start coming back for bottles after 50 kilometers. That's the rule, right? Now, in the Tour de France, sometimes with the heat, the commissaires decide maybe after 25 or 30K. And then they announce this on the race radio to the cars. And then usually the directors communicate that to the cyclist that they are already allowed to come back to the car for drinks. I was always using one phrase. I said, guys, the bar is open at kilometer 30. The bar is open, meaning you can come back for bottles. In the movie, written by David Walsh, there is a scene that I am sticking my head out of a camping car. And I say, guys, the bar is open. And that was the sign, if it depends, the movie says, that was the sign that the guys had to come into the camper to get a blood transfusion. The bar was open. So, I mean, and it's plenty full of these kind of that little things that happen that are put in a completely different contract, complete lie. And then there's a lot of things that I say, okay, yeah, you know what? That's true. That happened. But the way they have portrayed it, they gave it a completely different meaning, which is far from reality. And, and to really give you an idea of how unrealistic this movie was, a part of being a bad movie and not successful at all. The actor who played me in the movie, Denis Ménochet, contacted me before they started recording. I remember I was still living in London back then, and he contacted me by email, and he wanted to meet me. And I had a few years before I had written a book, so he read the whole book, and he said he wanted to have a meeting because that's usually what he does to get inside the personality. So we agreed on a time and a date, and 2 days before we were supposed to see each other, and he said, "This is off the record. This is my decision." He said. 2 days before we were supposed to meet each other, he sent me an email that the directors had heard that he was planning on meeting me, and he was told not to meet me. They did not want him to meet me. And I spoke to him afterwards, after the whole thing, and he said that he did his job, but he has refused to watch the finished product of the movie. Actually, the same exact thing happened. The lead role, Ben Foster, who plays Lance in the movie, has refused to watch the movie because they just did their job, but they did not agree with the story that the movie wanted to portray.
It's like they definitely didn't want this guy to meet you and then be like, oh, he's not so bad, because they wanted the movie to be negatively portraying you. There is a funny scene in it where,
and I have confronted David Walsh a few times with certain of these episodes, but he has never given me an answer or an acceptable answer.
There's like a funny scene in the movie where Lance shows up for his first race in Europe, and there's like someone like bullying him basically. The person is you.
Oh yeah, that also never happened.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that, like, actually this movie is a good example. It's made me question a lot, like say Zero Dark 30. I watched that movie and I'm like, well, I guess this is what happened. But it actually makes, after meeting you and Lance and having seen this movie, it actually makes me question a lot of movies that are like based on true stories that I've seen. It's like, because even the small thing that you mentioned, it's like, okay, you said the bar's open, but you were referencing something else. And then it gets, someone maybe says that in the writer's room, it gets one bit removed from reality, and then it's telling a whole different story. I'm sure that happens all through these scripts, and they don't actually like mirror what happened.
Yeah.
But there's another interesting scene where it's like you go to Austin because Lance is thinking about coming back, and you're like, there's a really good guy in the team. I don't think you can beat him. Did that happen, Johan?
That happened.
That did happen?
That did happen.
How'd that conversation go?
Oh, good. I remember Lance saying, okay, fine, we'll see.
That is the most interesting part of the movie, actually, like the him coming back. And I obviously I wasn't there, but I remember watching that really well. So that's like, you're kind of remembering it happening and then seeing behind the scenes. But it's like, what a weird experience for you guys. I can't imagine that, actually. A movie based on your things that you've done that aren't actually things that you've done, and then an actor portraying you. That's a surreal experience.
Well, I mean, let's face it. A lot of things that happened that were in the movie happened. They just didn't happen the way they wanted it to fit the story.
Yeah. Frustrating
part, but hey, what can you do? We're long past this, and we're long immune to all this bullshit. So I don't care at all.
I should say some of the acting was good. Like, the guy who plays you is good. The guy who plays Lance is good. I don't want to like denigrate their performances by saying the movie.
They're amazing actors, but they're professionals. And, it was telling that both of those guys have refused to watch the movie. It's telling for, they did their job. They did what they had to do, but they did disagree with the script.
Well, do you have anything else, Johan, before we take off?
Maybe I'll watch the program tonight.
Yeah, settle down on a Friday night, watch the program. We will be back next week, so send those questions into info@wedo.team if you want them answered.
Okay, thanks, Spencer. Speak soon.
All right, talk to you soon.